welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today here on the channel, we're going to be talking about Evil Dead Rise and its Warner Brothers 4K Blu-ray. So we already have a non-spoiler review of this film here on the channel, but I decided to revisit the film. I just got the 4K Blu-ray for about $10, and I haven't done a review of the channel, so I decided, you know what, let's do a spoiler review, and let's review this 4K Blu-ray. So if you don't want to have this film spoiled for you, skip ahead to the 4K Blu-ray portion of this review. That timestamp is right here. So that is your final warning for that. So this film was directed by Lee Cronin. It's only the second film he's ever directed. It stars Lily Sullivan and Alyssa Sutherland, and the two of them are sisters. The one sister, played by Alyssa Sutherland, lives in a big high-rise apartment building with her 3 kids. Unfortunately, at the very beginning of this movie, we find out that her husband has left the family, pretty much abandoned them, so she's just raising these 3 kids in this old, broken-down building that's actually going to get torn down in a month. But her sister shows up one day. She's a tech for a band, and we see that she's probably pregnant. We see her taking a pregnancy test. They don't ever confirm until, like, the end of the movie that she is actually pregnant, but they hint at it so many times that it's pretty obvious that she's pregnant. So she shows up there really to have her sister walk her through this, because her sister's always been the shoulder for her to lean on. But unfortunately, her sister is going through something that's really hard on not just her, but on her entire family. And because she's pregnant, you can see that she's becoming more of a caring individual. She's starting to care for her nieces and nephews, who she might not have cared about. We don't know for sure, but she might not have taken their needs more seriously had she not become pregnant, which is important to this film because, as we see, there's a big giant earthquake that splits the building almost in half, essentially opens up this big giant safe that nobody was supposed to get into, and one of the kids, he decides, you know what, let's put this record on, let's spin this bad boy, and let's see what it's on here. And unfortunately, combined that with the Book of the Dead that's just sitting there. You know, I don't know why you'd open up a book that has teeth on it, but he does, and the book gets read aloud, and that, of course, releases these spirits. And it's really cool to see them change the setting from what we're used to seeing it be in, which is cabin in the woods. We had Army of Darkness that left that setting for a little while and went to medieval times, but for the most part, this franchise, even the reboot from 2013, it took place in the woods. So it was a really cool concept to see him take over an apartment building. You know, that's obviously going to increase the body count. All the gore in this movie is just absolutely stunning, and that really did impress me. I don't know why I didn't love it the first time I saw it, but there is so much fantastic things they're doing with the camera in this movie. I love the scene in this film where they pretty much just set the camera up through the keyhole, and we just see the one girl just murdering the shit out of everybody else in the hallway, and then she just keeps coming back to try and get the little girl to open the door for her. Why she can't open the door herself, I don't know. I think she's just messing around with the little girl at that point, which is pretty damn sick. And this movie also really goes for it as far as the kills. Not only are they violent and gory, but they're killing kids in this movie as well. So anytime you go for that, you know you're trying to tell a dark tale. And also, the director clearly loves the Evil Dead franchise. He's paying homage to it in so many different ways. The opening credits of this movie, which I like to nerd out over opening credits. I know not a lot of people care about what title cards look like, but that, for me, is something that's just always been very fascinating to me. Maybe it's the James Bond fan in me, but I always love opening credits. So this one, they kind of started off paying homage to the Evil Dead franchise, where it looks like from their first couple Evil Dead films, where, you know, the camera's just moving around through the woods. So they have it going through the woods, and we're seeing all the opening credits until eventually the one girl rises up out of the water and the title card Evil Dead Rise is behind her. I love that stuff. So you could just tell that the director loves the Evil Dead franchise. He's paying homage to it in so many different ways, but he's also paying homage to the 2013 Evil Dead film. If you notice that Ford Taurus that's in the garage, that's the same Ford Taurus. I don't know if it's the same exact Ford Taurus, but it's the same exact design as the Ford Taurus that is in the 2013 film, which is also pretty cool because Sam Raimi, who directed the first 3 films, you know, he always puts that yellow car, which was his yellow car, in all of his films. So I felt like that was an homage to Sam Raimi as well. So I love a lot of the decisions that were made in this movie. Also the acting, not only by our 2 leads, but the 3 kids. They really do a great job. It really can't be undersold how well of a job they did for 3 young actors. I mean, one of them I believe was in their 20s, but the one little girl who ends up actually surviving all the way to the end, she does a great job. You end up caring about her and her relationship with her aunt, and her aunt does just such a great job acting in this movie as well. Very surprising for an Evil Dead movie. You wouldn't have expected that, especially since this movie was originally supposed to go to Max, so it's thank God that we actually got a theatrical release for it. I was able to see it in the Dolby Theater and really appreciate one thing that we're going to talk about more in the 4K Blu-ray review, and that's the sound design and also the cinematography. Just shot beautifully. They try and keep this movie very dark for the entire film, except for the very opening of this movie when they're actually in the woods. That's the only time this film is ever actually bright. For the most part, it's very dark, but they don't overexpose the lights like they love to do in modern horror films. Even from WB, like The Nun 2. Most modern horror films, and that's why I always say they're like very generic, is they always like to overexpose the light. The cinematography in most horror films today is exactly the same. So I really do appreciate the cinematographer and the director actually coming together and making a very compelling, good-looking film. Now, it is shot digitally, so I have my flaws with that. We'll talk more about that in the 4K Blu-ray review as well. But for the most part, for a modern horror film, this one really did look very, very good. The audio design is phenomenal. When I saw it in the Dolby Theater, it just sounded incredible. So I really don't have too many complaints about this movie. I just don't think it still hits the highs of the original trilogy. I do love the end of this movie, by the way. One of my favorite films that still doesn't have a physical release is The Empty Man, and they did something like this as well, where the very opening of the movie, we see a scene, which plays out way longer in The Empty Man. This is only about 4 minutes, but in The Empty Man, it's like 22 minutes, I believe. You know, we see this whole scene happen. We see all these people just get destroyed and murdered at this dock, and we never find out exactly what happened to them. So at the very end of this movie, two of our main characters are walking away. We see the girl from the beginning of this movie. She has a FaceTime call with the other girl from the movie. So we're like, oh shit, this took place before the opening of this movie. I love it when they do things like that. They did in The Empty Man. One of the Final Destination films did this as well, but where the end of one of the movies actually took place before the opening of the first movie. Love it when they do things like that. Just tie it back. It's there for the fans, and I really think that's very clever writing. So overall, this is a pretty damn good Evil Dead film. I definitely underappreciated and just kind of overhyped myself the first time I saw it, because watching it the second time, I really did enjoy myself. Is it one of the best Evil Dead films? No, but I would say it's still better than Evil Dead 2013, so overall, I could definitely recommend it. It's probably still one of the best horror films in 2023, mainly because 2023 has been a little bit disappointing as far as horror goes, but Talk to Me is still the best horror film to come out this year. But Evil Dead Rise is probably on its tail, so it's a very good film. So anyway, let's talk about this 4K Blu-ray from Warner Brothers. But before we do that, if you are a fan of Let's Talk and you want to continue to get 4K Blu-ray reviews like this, nothing helps this channel out more than by you just simply liking the video, subscribe to the channel. If you want to support us financially, we also have channel memberships. You can look at that in the description below. We just really appreciate your support any which way we can. So let's talk about this 4K Blu-ray. Will be. So like I said, I just got this on sale from Amazon for $9.99. It's going to be on sale throughout the entire Black Friday cycle, which is insane because when it first came out, I believe it was $30. It came out with a 4K steelbook, which again got a re-release more recently as well, and that was like $38. So it's just absolutely insane how high they price new releases at this point, which we all know that eventually studio releases like Warner Brothers, Paramount, Universal, they will go on sale for most of the major holidays, especially around Black Friday. So I waited, my patience did pay off, and I always do recommend that, especially with new releases. That's why I don't do too many new releases here on the channel, especially from studios. I'll do new releases from boutique labels any time of the week, but when it comes to studio labels, they overcharge it so much at the beginning, and they don't really give you too much with it. So that's why I will never buy a new release at $30, because they don't give us any of the bells and whistles that a boutique label would give us. So it's very unfortunate, but for $9.99, was it worth it? Well, let's see. First of all, like I said, I did get a steelbook package, which I would have preferred, to be honest with you guys, but I got this slipcover version for $9.99. And it's a Warner Brothers slipcover version with the 100th anniversary edition logo on it, which I do appreciate. I always appreciate it when they put these nice matte finishes on it, make it feel a little bit special, not just any kind of plain Jane slipcover. You come underneath. Now it is the same exact artwork underneath, but that's to be expected. You come inside, and Warner Brothers at least tries to do a little bit of individual disc design. Nothing too special, nothing that's going to stand out, but it's not just a black 4K and a blue Blu-ray. I'm looking at you, Paramount. You know, they actually did something here. And the audio track that's on there is a Dolby Atmos track, which is awesome. It's a fantastic Dolby Atmos track. The sound design, the sound mixing of this movie, when I saw it in the Dolby Theater, it was fantastic. I couldn't wait to watch it at home because at the time, that was the thing that stood out to me most when I was watching this film, was the beautiful sound design. And they really did recapture that at home with the Dolby Atmos track. I mean, things are flying around the room. There's a scene in an elevator, and you could just hear the little bit of electricity like in the background coming from just one of your channels, and then something else is coming from another channel, and the way it just shoots at you. I mean, it does actually do a great job of building up the dread. As far as Dolby Atmos tracks go, this is one of the best of 2023. Horror always lends itself so well to the Dolby Atmos aspect, mainly because, you know, you want to have that creeping in the back of your ears. Obviously, dramas don't really bring that to the table like an action film or a horror film. I really do think that Dolby Atmos tracks, DTS:X tracks, they really lend themselves most to the horror genre and to the action genre, and this is one of the best in the horror genre. It is just mixed so well. That elevator scene is just an example of how many different times throughout this film they do some great audio design with that. I just absolutely love what they did with the audio track. And unlike Paramount, they don't really give us too many options as far as audio tracks go or subtitles go. They even really label it pretty poorly in the menus, and that's the same exact menu system that's on the Blu-ray and on the 4K. So that Blu-ray actually has a Dolby Atmos track on it, which is pretty cool. We don't get that too often, but when it comes to new releases, if it does have an Atmos track, it's gonna probably on the Blu-ray as well, because the Blu-ray that is packed in here is just a downgraded version of this new 4K. It's just in 1080p, just without HDR on it. Because it's Warner Brothers, they do not use Dolby Vision. I have no idea why, but they do a great job in-house with their 4K releases. Whatever technology they're using, the HDR10 is more than enough. It doesn't need Dolby Vision. I always appreciate Warner Brothers 4K releases. I think they do some of the best scans out there. And I guess this is no different. The thing with this one is, it's unlike one of their catalog titles. This is a modern film shot probably last year with digital cameras, so there's no film grain or anything like that. And it just doesn't catch your eye like bringing an old film to the 4K platform. Movies like Cool Hand Luke, The Maltese Falcon, Exorcist, bringing those movies to the 4K platform and bringing it to the modern age while also keeping it in the 1970s or the 1960s, depending when the film came out. It just looked absolutely gorgeous, and it was stunning because it's not how you remembered the film. Now, this is exactly how I remembered the film in theaters. There really were no changes, and when you compare the Blu-ray to the 4K, it's very, very, very hard to find a difference in the two. Yes, the HDR is going to make it look a little bit brighter, and if you're looking very close, you pause it and you can look at like the skin on somebody, you might see a little bit more reflection. You might see like the sweat glands on their faces a little bit more noticeable, and you know, obviously the HDR does make it a little bit brighter, but it's nothing too big when you compare the two, because it's shot on modern cameras. Modern films, you know, they have that certain distinct look to them, mainly because we're using some of the best technology. You know, a lot of it does come down to how you light the sets, how you use the practical effects, which they do very well in this movie as well. Combining that with CGI, I think that's what's always going to lend itself more to the 4K format when a modern film, in comparison to an old film that we're cleaning up actual film and bringing it to the best way, the way it was intended to look. So for that, you know, the visuals are great. They are. I can't sell them short. It's just not going to blow you away like bringing an old film to the 4K platform. And that's the thing that really does stand out, but it's still modern film, great audio, great visuals. Now, here's what kills me with this. There is not one single extra on the Blu-ray or the 4K. And I know most people don't really care about the extras. That's just something that I complain about. But if you saw Christopher Nolan recently, he talked about the importance of extras on the DVD format and how that was a big deal. And that was. If you guys jumped from VHS to DVD, that was the big selling point. To really get you in the door was adding extras on there. Hey, you can look at a making of documentary. You can get these interviews on top of having the film in the new highest format. And on new releases, Warner Brothers loves to do this, but most of the studios do as well. They won't give us any sort of extra at all. Mostly we'll just get a trailer and they'll hype it up like it's the biggest deal in the world. I don't remember what movie it was, but they hyped up over 15 minutes of extras. 15 minutes? You're going to brag about 15 minutes? I guess that's 15 minutes more than we get with the Evil Dead Rise here, but still. It just, not to have anything is ridiculous. And a movie like this, I would have loved some interviews. Maybe just a 20-minute making of documentary showing how they put the makeup on all these people, because these people are soaked in blood towards the end of this movie. I would love to see their thoughts on it. I would love to see how they put the practical effects on it. Maybe have an interview with the audio designer, the cinematographer, just because I want to know how they did it. Like, for me, you guys know, I'm a big fan of physical media, but I'm a bigger fan of movies first. I'm always going to care about the film before the actual quality of a disc. And I really do love the filmmaking process, and I love interviews with actors and directors and cinematographers. For me, that's the juice. Like, that's what I'm really there for. And to include no extras, I'm sorry, that's just very, very, very disappointing to me. But, you know, I understand that most people don't put the same value on extras as I do, so I have to, you know, take that into account when I give this my final score. And how would I rate this on a scale of 1 to 10? Well, the film is pretty damn good. The audio and visuals are all top-notch. It's just the extras drag it down. The packaging for the regular standard release, you know, it's nothing too special, but it's still very, very solid. If you got that steelbook, you probably got the better end of the deal. So how would I rate this on a score of 1 to 10? I would still give it a pretty solid 8 out of 10. Just those extras really drag it down for me. And just make sure you're not buying this at full price. If you can get it around $9.99, that's the ideal price for this. I mean, even if it went up to like $14.99, I guess that's still pretty fair for a modern 2023 film using modern technology. But for $30, that is absolutely disgusting. Never buy it from Warner Bros. At that price, because they only included the film. And for me, that's just too disappointing for me to give it a pass. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for being here with me on another episode of Let's Talk. I want to thank my 3 producers, John Doe Juggalo, Jason Martin, and Frank Rodriguez. I really appreciate your support, guys. And I also want to thank my one director at the moment, Kevin Kruger. I also really appreciate your support, buddy. Thank you so much. We'll have his second choice review, Jared from Subway, coming out next week sometime. So if you want to join the ranks of those 3 guys and Kevin Kruger, you can do that. But we also have a Friends of the Channel tier you can join. And anyone who's a channel member, where you're going to put your name on a magic wheel at the end of this month, and the name it lands on, they will actually win a sealed copy of the new Criterion release that is coming out on November 21st, Mean Streets, on 4K Blu-ray. The movie that put Martin Scorsese on the map is getting a brand new scan. I think it was done with Studio Canal and Criterion, so we'll be giving that away to any of our channel members. So if you want to join them, click the link in the description below, hit that join button. But if you don't want to, no big deal at all, guys. We just support you guys watching this video, and if you want to support us, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, get out in those streets and tell your friends about us, and we will be seeing you around.